Well, welcome everyone. It's exactly noon here for Bear Analytics Event Insight Series webinar. So we thank you for joining us. We have this every Wednesday at noon. So if you're back, welcome. If you're first time with us, welcome as well. So we're glad to have you. So today's discussion is going to be centered around attendee marketing. The theme of it is the new rules of attendee marketing. We're throwing away the old rules. We're looking at new stuff, what's on the horizon. And we have a special guest, a real friend of ours, a friend of the Bear Analytics team, Julie Parsons, who's from District Marketing Group. She's the managing director and co-founder there. So she'll be sharing some words of wisdom and gems on attendee marketing and what she's employing with her clients as they look to continue to grow their events from an attendee perspective. Before we jump into the discussion though, feel free, if you have any questions at all, put them in the chat, put them in the question area. You can send them to me directly as well, and we'll sprinkle them in through the discussion today. We won't wait until the end to get to everybody's question. If you have something, throw it our way. We'll interrupt the discussion, so to speak, get in front of Julie and Joe and get that answered, and then go along our way. So we're definitely looking forward to a lively discussion as always. And with that, I'll turn it over to Joe, who's going to lead it for us.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Appreciate that. I'm really excited for today's discussion. It's all about data. It's all about attendee marketing, as you heard Eric said. If you want to generate a little data, we got a return to live survey. Eric's going to be throwing that link in the chat. It's brutal. It's about 8 questions. It takes about 3 minutes to fill out. If you fill it out, we're going to give you the survey responses and our little analysis afterwards. So give a little, get a lot. Please don't hesitate to do that now or after today's discussion. We appreciate it. Now let's get right into it. So Julie, the name's new, not Julie, but the name's new, District Marketing Group, but the team, the expertise, that's not exactly new on the scene. So let's start with a little bit for those who may not know you on today's discussion. Talk to us a little bit about District Marketing Group and your background and how you got to this point.
Yeah, sure. First, thanks for asking me to do this. I'm excited for this conversation. I think it's really important. Yeah, I am the co-founder of District Marketing Group with my partner, Elizabeth Ellen. So it is a new company and it's not. We formed District in January of this year when our former company, Fixation Marketing, went suddenly and sort of dramatically out of business, to be candid. And so initially we started this because we had some clients that were really left in the lurch, some long-standing clients that were left in the lurch by that change in our former company. And so in terms of like trying to triage for our clients and their projects, we started this company, and then we've been lucky enough to make it into a real live company. And we have a lot of our clients that have come with us, and we're still doing what we think we do best, which is full service marketing campaigns for trade shows, events, membership, and things like that.
So let's start right with it. Full service campaigns. What are you seeing in the marketplace today? Because everything that we hear, from the marketplace is, things along the lines of dynamic, fluid environment. The title of today's discussion is about the new rules. So as someone who's on the bleeding edge of this, what are some of the trends and tactics that you're seeing and your team's seeing?
Yeah, it's interesting. What we're seeing is that it's trendless, right? For a lot of our clients, things have, I guess my first comment would be know your industry, because it's different for everybody, I think. That being said, we are across the board seeing in the marketplace clients that are being taxed to replace all that revenue that they lost with less resources. I think that's the one thing that we're seeing that's pretty much across the board standard. So it's a lot of doing more with less and figuring out how to work with shrinking budgets to grow revenue, so that once that revenue comes back for events or trade shows or conferences, that you can start to replace the resources. So some of it is, kind of replacing the resource gap and making sure that you're taking advantage of whatever opportunities there are to go back to in-person events, substitute in virtual content, and be present in the space and kind of get back. We've had clients that went back to in-person events as long as, a year and a half ago, and some that just had their first event as recently as a couple months ago. One of the things I was going to say is I think that reading the marketplace right now is difficult. There's not a lot of trend lines to follow. For the most part, event marketing has like a tenor and a tempo. So some of the things within that probably haven't changed. And yet at the same time, everything within every channel probably has changed because there's a lot of contradictions right now where people want to go back to live events because virtual can't replace everything. And yet people are really used to virtual convenience, last minute decision making, considering budgets more carefully. So we're really asking people to rely a lot on data, but also know that trend lines might not be showing you everything that you need to know.
So let's unpack that last point a little bit.
Sure.
We hear this all the time. We've covered it on in this kind of webinar series through the eyes of a couple of our clients in April and late March, that virtual kind of dominant decision making of later, and later. This is one of those themes that we're seeing kind of across the board. It sounds like you all are too. What are some of maybe the hacks, the tactics? How are you kind of navigating your clients through those waters?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because, again, it's another contradiction, right? We have some people who have to decide earlier and earlier whether to travel because there are travel restrictions, budget restrictions within company decision-making structures. So some of that is an earlier decision-making process. And then again, like you said, because of virtual and this sort of new experience, there are things that are happening later and later. I think some of the hacks for us are that in the past, we have seen sort of all the channels operating right across a campaign, like direct mail, email, media, and digital. And some of those campaigns perform sort of predictably. And for us, at least with our experience with our clients, digital has always been a slower build, but one of our top performers. So we'll see kind of e-marketing and registration kind of going up at a standard kind of rate throughout the campaign. And then digital with list building and lookalike will build as it goes. And then we see a ton of spike in conversions at the end. I don't think a lot of us are in the position where we can rely on that to be our #1 converting channel right now, because we don't have the time or the resources to wait and see how it performs. So for us, one of the very kind of non-exciting hacks is email is always there for us as that powerhouse channel. A lot of our clients, because of budget reductions, are shrinking in the number of channels while not giving up a multi-channel approach. If you don't know if someone's at home or at the office, direct mail can be hard and expensive. And if digital is kind of picking up pace slower and spiking later, but you need conversions now and you need to be able to pivot now, email becomes really important. And if email is really important and central to your campaign, that doesn't mean you just can blast the hell out of everybody, right? So that makes your email strategy much more layered, a greater need for different templates, different visuals, different offers, different incentives, so that you can make that one channel perform in different phases and layers.
So if I'm just, oh, we already got a question. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, we got a question in here regarding marketing automation. So are people actually doing that? You talked a little bit about the omni-channel piece. Is it true marketing automation out there, or what are people doing? I guess that's really the question here.
I would say that we have supported our clients with marketing automation since it's kind of come into existence or come into more prominent existence as part of an omni-channel campaign. I think for us, as our recommendation as an agency, we recommend automation where it makes sense to get a message out there in a predictable, standard kind of rolling format. And right now for our clients, messaging is so key that, we're here for you. We've been here through the pandemic. We were essential through the pandemic. We're back and it's safe. Our industry is actually prospering. Whatever that message is, I think having a very customized message is important. So if you can factor that into automation, that's great. But if you need to personalize why your event, your organization, your mission is critical and different from other events that may have popped up in the space, I think knowing when to use automation is important.
Okay, appreciate you answering that from the audience here.
Sure.
Yeah, and please feel free to keep on the questions, folks. We appreciate it. Going back to right before the question, one of the things you mentioned, Juliet. So it sounds like, if I'm distilling down that last point, it's like the timing might be more focused, or you might have a narrower window. To your last point there, the messaging is kind of hypercritical, and then you have this constraint of maybe less people, maybe less budget, maybe less of less of both. How are you navigating, and how is your team navigating that need for agility? What are you looking at? What are you responding to in order to be, it sounds like, more flexible or more dexterous than ever? If you agree with that.
I do agree with that, and I think I gave this some thought because I feel like all my notes to think about this conversation were very contradictory to each other, because that's sort of the way the marketplace is, and it's different within different clients. But I think two things that I would say about being dexterous like that and having is, one, take the flexibility and the time when you do have it, which is before the campaign starts. So we are really trying to pivot away from wordy, long marketing plans and look at matrices and things where we can say we need to hit this audience with this message, with this offer in this way, because it's worked before or it hasn't worked, or because things for that audience have changed. So taking the planning period and making good use of it. Don't assume that your value proposition or your return on investment applies the same way that it did before, or maybe it's more relevant than ever before. But so one of the things I would say is be dexterous when the campaign goes live by expanding and extending your brand position value statement in the planning phase. So really know what you're going to do and when you're going to do it, so that you can indeed be dexterous when the campaign starts. Because to your point, you have from launch to live, right, to get this done. Again, there's this predictable campaign cycle, and we all have a lot more data, which, you know, can mean a few things, but than we used to. But with the shortage of staff resources and external resources, you might not have time to go to every single dashboard and email. You know, you have to look at all those things to make use of that information and to pivot and be nimble. So I think if you can plan for those pivot points and what sort of KPIs you're looking for, not just conversion rates, but what awareness and engagement, how are you redrawing people back into your event? I think you then do need to be really dexterous in campaign, which means knowing what measurements and metrics you're looking for on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and be ready to act. Don't just look and see what's performing. Be ready to act with a new ad, a new subject line. Media, for example, can be really tricky because you have this investment and you've signed an insertion order, and some of those campaigns, because they've already started, they just run. We can't afford to do that anymore. So every campaign, we have to look at what's happening and be ready to change. And we have to know whether that's a change in message, adding in an offer. And if you can add those sort of trigger points for milestones for what you may or may not do in a pivot when you're planning, that'll help. Kind of be nimble, but realizing that everybody doesn't have 24 hours a day, 8 months a year to kind of make this all happen.
Well, it sounds like again, kind of summarizing what you're saying, the nimbleness starts at the beginning. So one of the first things you mentioned is, you know, we want to have a matrix kind of lined up already at our audience segments. You mentioned, like, in the middle part of your statement, we want to know how we're going to be, you know, redrawing folks or who our alumni audience is. This assumes that you have a decent handle on, you know, your data, everyone's kind of master list and what folks are
Sure.
doing. So what do you look for? If you're walking into a new client scenario, what are you looking for? What are you prompting them to kind of hopefully have, you know, waiting in the wings from a, you know, a data and an audience perspective, or a historical audience prospect perspective?
I mean, I think that can change, right? It's just, I mean, we have some clients that are lucky enough to have long-standing shows where attendance is sort of stable, you know, so if you have that, obviously the most obvious answer is to have a good look at the trend lines and historical data that can inform and be actionable. But at the same time, I think there's kind of an opportunity right now, which is we're all in growth mode because we need to grow revenue. But at the same time, I think it's really important to know who your loyal attendees are, because they should be the people that are coming back. They should be the people that are coming. So in some ways, it simplifies that need that you're talking about what do you need to know. If you know historically that emails that offer a promo code perform well, you know, try a promo code, even, you know, look back at the data to see what performed. Some of that is not as complicated. We have some clients where text emails work really well. That's great. Before you can get your campaign email template or whatever you do going, drop a text email out there and see how it performs. I guess my point would be KPI, you want conversions. You can look at a number of KPIs or measurements or trackable things, but what you're trying to get to is conversions. So if you know ideally the audience that you want to get to and how many people you want to get to your event, everything you're doing has to convert. And don't be afraid to change what you're doing or try something different to get there. I don't know if
I really like that last point, because what I'm not hearing is, here's the 4-step philosophy. It's guaranteed to work for everyone. You're ready. I mean, I haven't kept track, but at least 25 kind of different levers you've mentioned on this webinar already that you and your team look for when you're starting out and rolling through a campaign to kind of really not engineer success. It sounds like find success. Not all of the ideas are going to be winners. You got to be willing to maybe put some of the ones that aren't working behind you and then try something new. Do I have that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's a few things that are kind of inherently true, which is there is no silver bullet. It's different for every industry. Event marketing, like I said, does have a tempo to it, but your industry is different. So you need to know what you know and what you're missing. What are your gaps in information? What has worked before? There's knowledge in there, even if you don't have, 50-page reports on your event. And the other thing, one of your questions, was about moving the needle. I think the biggest thing is, like I said, there's not a silver bullet, but you need to make sure that you're indeed moving the needle. I think that's the important of that data is, are we doing something? Is it working? And then there's a number of ways to try within the minute to make sure that you're getting to the conversions that you need. But no, there's 50 different answers for every question, because the channels and the things, a lot of the things remain the same. Event marketing has channels that work really well, and there are channels that create awareness and engagement that you use to factor in and build those other channels. And as we've seen budgets shrink, we've kind of peeled away some of the investment in other channels as we've had to, because one of the things we don't want to see people doing is trying to spread a smaller budget over every channel because they have to hit every audience in every way. You want to make the best use of your investment in the things that are working, so you have to know what's working.
So not a mile wide and an inch deep. Well, before that question, Eric, I just wanted to give you one follow-up. Can you give me an example or two, or some of the things that you would classify as being peeled away? Just so for those on the webinar that might be looking at, 6 or 7 channels and they're trying to cut their bottom 2 performers. What do you, broad strokes, what would you recommend or suggest?
Anything that's not immediately trackable and measurable. So direct mail a lot of times falls into that. Direct mail it's an easy target. We love it, but it's an easy target because we don't know if people are at home or at work right now. So addresses can be a problem. Postage is expensive, and you can't track it as directly as something else, with a UTM code. So direct mail is one thing. I'd love to see people going back to strong media buys and media partnerships if you're not doing that, but print advertising, just because like direct mail, it can be hard to track and can kind of be a passive awareness channel, but so many pubs have pivoted to create these great engaging media strategies. So print media is tough, but publishers are responding, so there's opportunities there. So direct mail and print, anything that's hard to track and costs a lot of money.
Okay, no less ROI on that bucket. Totally get it. Eric,
yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you.
No, not a problem. We got a question from the audience again here. Have you noticed that text-based emails are performing much better for clients? Question for Julie.
Yeah, some client, again, I wish I had an answer that applied to everybody. We do have a couple clients that sometimes they're top performers, but then we just came out of a campaign where it wasn't in the top 5. So I think the most important thing is try it. Try to change up your subject lines, try different things. I think the short answer is a text-based email may perform really well if you haven't been doing it over and over again. And then if it saturates with your audience, then you switch to something else. But it's an easy thing to give a try to if you haven't done it. And they do get good readability. People think they're hearing from your organization. I think especially right now where we're really trying to push mission-based and association-centric language on why our events are what matters in the industries that we're in, rather than some other event that, kind of exists separate from that mission-based organization. A text-based email can look like a direct message from you to your members or your constituents or your attendees about why your event has value.
Awesome. Thanks for answering that.
Yeah, sure.
Appreciate the question from the audience as well.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so maybe not navigating away from, cutting some of the things that don't work. Let's talk about what success looks like. So when you're layering out a campaign, kind of call it in like the post-COVID, return to revenue, return to live era, and you're drawing on your experience, pre-pandemic, is it as simple as, success for us today is email open rates are going from, 15% to now we're getting 22%, or like it? I guess the question I'm trying to get to, is there anything that's maybe a little bit more stark in comparison that you look for to know, okay, this channel's performing, we're starting to see those conversions? Is it gradual, or is it a little bit more deliberate?
I think this is the part that's been hard to, we operate as marketers on predictive information, and if things are not predictable right now. I feel like a lot of our clients feel like they're flying the plane while they're building it. One of those contradictions I was talking about was that people want to come back to an event they know or are comfortable with in a space, and yet want to see completely new experiences. So I guess this is where I would talk about layering your audience. I think if you have loyal attendees or members or boards or committee, the people that should be at your event, the sign of a healthy event is that pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, no pandemic, you have people that should be there. So being able to peel those people away in whatever channel and track whether they are registering, because they should be your earlier registrants. They should be the people that you can get to make that earlier buying decision. So sometimes it's not about the channel, the audience. I would ask people not just to segment by market, but know, and you guys have done this, I've seen some of your reports where if this is like a super hot prospect, they're going to treat them different with somebody who's come 10 different times or 10 times to the show. So one of the things I would say on performance is about knowing who you expect to behave in a certain way and make sure they're behaving that way. We have been tracking attendance conversions by channel a lot, but also knowing if we expect whatever 1,000 number of attendees, we should have 25% of those attendees by this date. We should have 50% by this date. So we're trying to find more ways to break out that data so that we're not just tracking a channel that may be underperforming because the market has changed. We can also say, okay, email's a little low, Facebook is way off, and our loyal attendees aren't coming back at a percentage that we expected. And we thought we'd hit 25% of attendance at March 15th, and we were at 18 or 27%. So again, it's just knowing those. That's why we're sort of talking about the planning period, knowing what you need to see in performance and not assuming that an underperformance in one channel doesn't mean you're not getting engagement and performance out of that channel. I know a lot of this is so ambiguous, but
let's expand on that a little bit though. So
sure.
I'm gonna hold your feet to the fire a little bit on that. So let's pretend we got that environment. We're 25% of the way through the campaign life cycle. We're trending a little farther behind, than we'd like to be. We have a decent line of sight onto, we have a couple of channels that are performing okay, maybe some that are underperforming. What's that look like, those discussions between you, your team, and the client to turn that around? I mean, what are some, how does that navigate? Because I think if folks, they're probably having those discussions anyway, whether or not they're, using an outside agency or not. So what does that look like?
I think the very first thing that we would say is that people who are making a decision need something to make a decision about. So if presumably you're at about 25% of the campaign, that means you've announced a lot of the information that you have. So people have already absorbed that and either acted or not. So what we would say, I know I can hear with my team, is what's the next moment of urgency or announcement or offer, or what are you going to insert across channels? Because it's not at that point probably about a channel unless you see something significantly underperforming and you can move funds to another channel. I think it's more about how do we call to action. It's like, but how do we create a moment of urgency in the campaign if it's not organically there with a price increase to see, can we move the needle by putting a decision in front of our audience? That would be the first thing that I would say to do.
Awesome. Sage advice. Really appreciate it. So piggybacking on that, oh, Eric, go ahead. We got the question finger. Go ahead.
That's my question finger. So we got another one coming in here. What are you seeing from your association clients in regards to attendance goals from 2019 to 2022? Higher, same, lower?
Oh man, I wish I could. Actually, we have one client across the board. For us, people are increasing their goals while decreasing budgets. I do think we had one client who was really in 2020 and 2021, I guess, coming back to their events, had a board that said we should go flat or less. And we've had clients who have said we can expect to see a 10% decrease, sort of predictably. I think when you see a revenue shortfall like what we've all seen, I think everybody's kind of just increasing their numbers, sort of either realistically or unrealistically, but a lot of our clients have bounced back in a really healthy way. So I would say anything from a reasonable decrease of about 10%, but with an even or greater budget decrease, to clients who will just say, that's great, we need 20% more attendees to hit revenue goals, and that you're sort of living in a world that's not realistic, and you just, internally with the client team, we say, okay, what's our goal? What metrics are we shooting for?
Yeah, I think actually just to piggyback on that, a lot of the context that we hear in the marketplace is for the last 2 years, the rock stars have been those who've been able to cut budget as aggressively and intelligently as possible because of those revenue shortfalls. And so it became almost like an accounting all-star exercise. And now it's really hard to get that investment hat back on because there's still a lot of uncertainty, I think, to a couple of points that you made earlier, Julie, as well.
Yeah, and I think the squeeze, for us, we're an outside resource, you're an outside resource, so what we've seen is, expectation on attendance goals that are either higher or, stable, but still a big reach for where we are. And then a removal of budget or external resources. So these inside, our clients, God bless, our client staffs are taxed. They're wearing 50 hats where they were wearing 20. And I think it's really putting a lot of pressure on the association staffing. We're seeing a lot of positions changing over because I think people are just taking on so much. So I think at some point it will have to swing back to either internal resources, external resources, addressing that gap once the hiring process becomes a little bit more clear for all of us. But it's tough because who gets taxed on that is the staff.
And on that note, I just realized there's only 2 minutes left. This has been an incredibly informative dialogue. Julie, thank you. We already discussed on the pre-call, we're going to be doing this once a quarter. We're just going to keep ringing Julie for all that knowledge and insights that she brings. Today was an awesome discussion. So awesome, in fact, first announcement, we don't even have the collateral developed yet, but we're working on it. We just announced a partnership between Bear Analytics and District Marketing Group. Her team is unbelievable at looking at the data. They're driving the development of our Bear IQ platform. We're already seeing client success working together. We're going to have an event that's going to blow the doors off in about 3 weeks here. So that's announcement number one. More to come on that. Check your social feeds towards the end of this month. Newly minted ink, that's why. And then number two, we are talking about what's coming next on our webinar series. We're talking about the new post-event report economy, being able to turn around your data after an event and immediately start to get the insights to grow the next one in your portfolio. June 1st, we're off to ECEF, so we're going to actually take that Wednesday off. We got another announcement for June 15th. Haven't finalized it yet, but that one's coming. And then two, again, rock stars towards the end of June, talking about virtual event engagement with Vinu and community insights with Dana Fraker-Duty there of Juno at the end of June. Eric, anything else? We got one more question?
Got one more question, Julie. You've got
Let's
30
do one
seconds.
more. Let's go.
I'll
Let's
ask
go.
questions.
On the hot seat.
Okay.
What do you think of influencer or ambassador program / outreach for weaker performing segments, if they're your loyalists, regional, or certain business types? So ambassador program outreach or influencer ambassador program outreach marketing.
The short answer is I'm all for it if you can factor that in, because any of those internal sort of things that you can do that are low spend but possible high amplification of your message among people that are trusted in your industry, I think it's great. Across social media, or there's a variety of ways to do it, but I would say yes, yes, yes.
Boom. There you go. Mic drop at the end, right at 12:30 on the dot.
Right on the money.
Thank you guys so much. This was fun.
No, it was great. And we'll have you back. This is a 13-part series with Julie Parsons. We'll have her back, like Joe said, every quarter. We really appreciate you all staying on. And hopefully you'll join us again next week. Thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Take care.